everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. It has been 1 week since Vladimir Putin launched the invasion of Ukraine. As Russian forces face resistance around the capital city of Kyiv, Russia is directing its offensive to the southern part of the country, where the key city of Kherson is now under Putin's control. Russian forces continue to bombard key cities in the south, including Mariupol, with an aim to control the key port city of Odessa to gain complete control over the critical Black Sea. Even as the West has pumped in arms into Ukraine via neighboring NATO nations, Ukraine is outmanned and outgunned, while Western sanctions and resolutions have failed to slow down Putin's war machine or dent his war chest. India is maintaining a stand of neutrality with a focus on the swift evacuation of Indian citizens from the war zone. But it will be a diplomatic tightrope walk during the Quad meeting later today. Over 6,000 Indian nationals have been evacuated so far, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi met some of the students in Varanasi today. Ukraine is going through a humanitarian crisis where the number of refugees is nearing 1 million. This comes as talks are still not off the table. And the delegations from both sides will hold the second round of dialogue at the Poland-Belarus border. The question remains, what will it take to achieve a ceasefire and end the carnage in Ukraine? Besides Ukraine and Russia, is it time for the United States and the NATO nations to join the dialogue process as well? Joining me on the show, Avinash Gaba. He is the Indian student who is currently stranded in Romania. We have Swat Oslav Urash, Ukrainian MP and head of parliamentary friendship group with India, joining me live from Kyiv. Professor Scott Lucas is international affairs expert, joining me from Birmingham. Vivek Karju, former Secretary, Minister of External Affairs, and Fred Weyer is political analyst and Russia correspondent at the Christian Science Monitor. He's joining me from Moscow. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. I'm going to begin with you, Member of Parliament Urash. What is the situation on ground? And news just coming in that there has been a conversation that has taken place between Vladimir Putin and Emmanuel Macron, and there has been another conversation between Emmanuel Macron and also the Premier of Ukraine. What is it that Ukraine is expecting at this moment?
What it is, a naked aggressor who invaded Ukraine from all possible sides across our 1,000-kilometer border, including Belarus, and landed its forces in the Black Sea while also moving forces south from Crimea. The fact of the matter is this is a pattern which Russia has continued for the 20 years of Putin's rule, and it needs to be not just punished but thrown out of the international community for it. First. Second, as far as the Ukrainians' resistance to Russia, we are slowing that Russian advance very clearly and being in the Kyiv, which is resisting as much as it can, destroying all the Russian incursions into the city and taking control of the situation, while also not allowing Russians to block our access to the western supply routes and southern supply routes. We are showing that Ukrainian nation shall not fall to Russian demands of submission.
What exactly
we are sovereign independent
MPs
nations
such
and
as
shall remain so.
Able to do for their people, for their constituents on ground at this moment when the entire country is being war-ravaged?
We are able to join in with the Ukrainian people in resistance to the Russians. I mean, myself and numerous other MPs have taken up arms and are joining the resistance and the defense. We are trying also, because of our different connections and friends and political influence, to try and organize various supplies and support for Ukrainian soldiers all over the front lines. I'm traveling almost daily to the various parts of the front lines, both in the west of Kyiv, in the south of Kyiv, in the north of Kyiv, in the east of Kyiv. The point here is that, again, we are joining in with everything we can to push back at the Russians. They're not just MPs, the president, prime minister, everybody else is here, showing the Russians we shall not be cowed.
Yes, and the sense that one got when the entire invasion began, Urash, was that it is only a matter of time that Kyiv will fall, but the resistance that has been displayed was something perhaps Vladimir Putin did not really calculate.
He never calculates the reality of Ukraine, the fact that Ukrainians want their nation to be independent by every poll and every measurement since our independence in 1991. From the referendum to become independent in 1991, Ukrainians wanted to be sovereign and independent, full stop. And the fact of the matter is, when that question is put to them, as it is by Russian forces right now, they are mobilizing themselves and putting everything they have to try and beat back the Russian forces.
Okay. Fred, coming on this, since you would understand Vladimir Putin's endgame perhaps better than many, Mr. Putin has told Macron that the goals of the Ukraine operation will be achieved in any case, and goals, of course, is demilitarization and neutral status will be achieved in any case. What does he actually mean here?
Is that Ukraine has to give some kind of guarantees that it won't ever join NATO and demilitarize. That especially means stop cooperating with any Western military organizations at any level. This is one demand. I think the Russians in these talks are also going to be demanding that Ukraine must recognize the annexation of Crimea and the independence of those two Donbass republics. This effectively means the dismemberment of Ukraine. If it can be achieved militarily, I mean, if the Russian military operation would succeed, it would be in terms of destroying the Ukrainian army, which is mostly concentrated in the Donbass. This seems to be the Russian goal there. At least what I hear from the defense ministry is that they are bypassing major cities, maybe surrounding them like Kharkiv and so on, but not assaulting them.
And so is Vladimir Putin now looking for some kind of an exit route?
Their goal is to encircle the Ukrainian army in the Donbass and destroy it.
So you are of the opinion that this is going as per the plan he expected and had perhaps foreseen the kind of economic sanctions that have come in from all the quarters and the military support that Ukraine is getting as well?
I think that he did. I think that the Russian plan is, I mean, it's awful on many levels. It's not well thought out, and it's based on a monstrous lie about the existence of Ukraine and what is Ukraine, but it may yet be achievable, I guess is what I'm saying. The Russians do know how to conduct large-scale military maneuvers. They have a lot of experience in that ground and the steppes of eastern Ukraine. So we have to, I mean, we simply have to face that possibility. And if the Russians win, then they will press those political demands that I outlined.
Vivek Karju, there will be a Quad meeting in which Prime Minister Modi will be participating as well. India's stand, whenever there has been a resolution in the last few days, has been that of abstaining. We have taken a neutral position. Many analysts in India are of the opinion that this is the right way forward. But given the situation that is escalating on ground, multiple cities destroyed, the large-scale devastation that we are witnessing, will India continue to have this stand, or will there be a rethink, according to you?
I think it's while India is formally abstaining in the UN forums, including the Security Council and the General Assembly, India's position has actually evolved. I think it is wrong to think that all there is to the Indian position is the abstention. That would be a misreading. If you see the evolution of the Indian position from February 21st till today, it shows a distinct tilt towards Ukraine. I think what India has not been able to accept, even if it has not said it in plain language, is the invasion of Ukraine. Let me illustrate this with only 2 points. The first is that in the February 21st statement, and before that, India used to talk about the need for security of all states. That was seen by observers, and I believe correctly, as a tilt towards Russia and an indication that India thought that Russian security needs had been ignored through the eastward expansion of NATO, and that there's a history to this. Now, today, India does not talk of the need for security. What it is emphasizing is sovereignty and territorial integrity of states,
Yes.
the need for dialogue, and above everything else, it has called for a ceasefire. That is in the explanation of vote in the UN General Assembly.
Yes.
Now, who is asking for a ceasefire? Not the Russians,
Yes.
but the Ukrainians. So therefore, if you look at the position, it's a complete, to my mind, as a former diplomat, it's a complete misrepresentation to say that India's position has remained static or that India is only abstaining. I think that is not seeing behind the abstention.
Vivek,
now,
yes.
my last point, quite clearly, the Western nations would like India to abstain, if nothing else, for its optics. I'm sure that they are aware of the evolution of the Indian position. But naturally, at this stage, they want India to be critical, to India to vote with them, because that would be a great feather in their cap that they moved India, which has been with Russia, which has close ties with Russia. But I think India is very wisely playing its diplomatic hand, and I hope that it will continue to show this wisdom, because quite clearly we have the need for Russia today. We've got to evacuate.
Yes,
and
the
have
point that
safe
you're making
passage
essentially about the ceasefires, perhaps that has to be read the way you have interpreted it, sir, as a former diplomat. Avinash Gaba, he's a student and he is stuck in Romania, is also joining us. Avinash, where exactly are you right now? And the government is clearly saying that the entire evacuation exercise is going to be completed in the next 2 to 3 days, because they are in touch with most students. And most of these students have left Ukraine and they have moved to, countries, the neighboring countries where you are, and they will be evacuated sooner. Avinash, if you can hear me, you have to unmute yourself. Go ahead. Okay. Okay, we'll try and fix that audio with Avinash Gaba. But Professor Lucas, despite all the UN resolutions and strong condemnation and military support from the West, Putin doesn't seem to be backing off. If anything, with every passing day, we are seeing more and more cities falling to the Russians. I asked that question to Fred. I'm going to ask that question to you again. Is Vladimir Putin now looking for an exit route?
Is in trouble over his initial plans, his attempt to break the Ukrainian government and conquer most of the country. In fact, you have mentioned that there have been 2 cities, and only 2 cities, which have been captured by the Russian ground offensive, and those are in southern Ukraine along the Black Sea. The latest was Kherson yesterday. But outside of that southern strip, the Russian offensives have not only failed to take cities, they failed last week to capture or kill Ukrainian leaders like Vladimir Zelensky. They have failed to encircle, let alone capture, Kyiv, Kharkiv, and other cities. Many Russian vehicles have actually stopped, whether because of supply issues, logistical issues, or lack of fuel. So you ask if Vladimir Putin's looking for an exit route. Vladimir Putin's immediate calculation is whether he steps up the offensive in a different way. Having failed on the ground to remove Zelensky and the government, having failed to enter Kyiv and Kharkiv and establish a position, Does he now try to level the cities? We are seeing increasing use of cruise missiles as well as rockets. We have seen universities, hospitals,
Yes.
other civilian sites struck in the last 48 hours, hundreds of civilians killed. In other words, Putin had hoped to take the cities at low cost and occupy Ukraine, but that low cost may now be replaced by a high cost strategy, destroying cities as Russia did in Chechnya, as it did in Syria. The problem for Putin is this: if you occupy at that high cost of destroying cities, you then own a broken Ukraine, and he will own a broken Ukraine with a Russian economy under great pressure, arguably at its own breaking point, not only because of sanctions, but because of internal difficulties. That's what I think he's trying to calculate right now, while the Russians try to buy time. And I do mean buy time by feigning the idea that they want negotiations with Ukraine and indeed with the West.
Okay. Let me get Avinash again. Avinash, I hope you can hear me. Where exactly are you? And the government here is giving a sense that most of the students they are in touch with them, and in the next 24 to 48 hours, perhaps, the entire evacuation exercise will be through.
Ma'am, actually, at this time, we are in capital city of Romania, and this is a kind of playground for basketball. And it's also provided by only Romanian government, by their mayors, not by Indian government. We have confirmed it 2 times, and they told us that this is from their government, not from Indian government. And since yesterday, nobody had contacted us, as we have tried many times to contact here in Indian embassy, but nobody is answering us. We just came to know that our other friends who just came yesterday, and they are saying that we do have to stay here 2-3 days, but we don't know. Well, our representative is going to contact us. As we are trying to contact them, there is no any other possible way to call them or to reach them. Even their volunteers, that Romanian guys, they are saying they are trying their best, but they don't know whenever they are going to come or not.
How many students are there with you?
Ma'am, at this time, we are almost 200 students in this shelter. And in another shelter, there are all around 100 students, all boys. And in this shelter, there are girls and boys in one hall.
The government has put out some kind of form that you have to fill in, and then you will be considered for evacuation. Have you done that?
Let me clarify. Yeah, ma'am. Let me clarify you one thing. That government, they just sent us around 7 to 8 forms. We have already filled all those forms, but still we are waiting for their responses. And even Indian government, they told us that once you first they told us that you will get your transportation for border, but we had to arrange all the transportation by ourselves, and it was 4 to 5 times costly as usual. We paid around 10,000 on each person just for 400 kilometers, and usually it takes only 2 to 3,000 INR, but we paid around 10,000 in INR. And once we reached on the Moldova border, we had crossed Moldova border first, then Romania, and then we came here in capital city. So once we reached on Moldova border, it was not from Indian government. They are allowing all the foreigners to getting passed easily by those Moldova borders. So there are some channels, some people, and some students, they are saying Indian government is helping us. I don't think that they are correct, because all the Ukrainian police, army, they are allowing us to go, but they are also checking all the documents, if we are foreigners or not. If someone is Ukrainian, then they do ask, why are you going there? What's the reason? And when you will return? So around 5 p.m., they have curfew in all the cities. So nobody is allowed to go another cities. So that's why it's like 3 to 4 times costly transport for us. And once we reached on Moldova border, they helped us. After that, we came to Romania border. And so they provided us SIM card, free food. From Indian embassy in Moldova, they gave us savage water. And so it was sink. And they gave us walnuts. I don't think that we are going to eat that walnuts in bus.
Okay. Avinash, stay with us. And I hope there is some help that reaches you sooner, and the entire group of 200, 300 students that are there with you. Let me get the final words now from Fred Wire. Fred, you heard from, what the Ukrainians are thinking here. They are, of course, looking for how soon this entire war will end, but they are not giving up resistance. If only with every passing day, there is that resolve, certainly, that they want to fight for their country. In that case, what is the larger sentiment on ground in Moscow? Is Vladimir Putin there being seen as someone who is expansionist, because clearly this is an act of war? This is war, and what is happening is attacking a sovereign nation, which is completely unacceptable.
Yes, I think that myself, most of my friends, everybody I know is in shock and horror. I think that this war has been dictated from the top by Vladimir Putin, and he has a distorted idea of reality. This is absolutely clear. Nevertheless, the only poll we have, this is done by Vitsom earlier this week, found that 68% of Russians do support what is called the limited military operation. I think that the way the poll breaks down is they mostly support it because they support the idea of preventing Ukraine from joining NATO, and also the idea of defeating Ukrainian nationalists seems to be a strong sentiment among Russians. But I think the main reason for that really surprising poll number is that the whole pitch from state TV and from the establishment here is that whatever you think, this is a state of emergency. Russian troops are fighting in the field. You must,
Yes.
It's your patriotic duty. You must support the troops. I think that Russians, at least at this point, are resonating to that message, that kind of blind patriotism, not to protest against the authorities when our boys are fighting for their lives in the field. This is a fairly common thing. It's not just in Russia.
But Fred, fighting for what? Here is an invasion of a republic, a sovereign country, and what kind of support can he really expect from his own people? We were seeing some visuals of protests happening in Moscow or other cities. Has that all subsided?
It has, but I think that if this war goes on, God forbid, there will be a larger protest movement building. It's putting terrible strains on Russians. I don't know anybody who feels like they might feel grim. Like I do hear people saying, "We're in it now. We have to win it," but I don't hear anybody justifying it. It is a fratricidal war. It's a terrible thing. It cuts close to the bone for Russians. You know, Americans invaded Iraq like in a similar kind of war on false pretenses, and it was conducted in a similar fashion. But Iraq was far away. Most Americans couldn't find the place on a map. This is Ukraine. Most Russians have friends, associations, family down there. Russia has the world's biggest Ukrainian diaspora. This is so close to the bone, and it's shocking for people. So I do believe that when the shock wears off and the realities begin to sink in, however it turns out, this is going to be a time of change, political change in Russia.
So you are foreseeing political change, perhaps in near future. Thank you so much for joining us, Fred, Vivek Karju, Professor Lucas, and MPU Rush, and Avinash as well. We hope that you find an exit route and some help reaches you soon. That's all from me. This remains out of focus here on CNN News 18.